My air compressor was leaking at the pressure switch. It's the part that mounts on here. And so I've removed it off. I'll show you what it looks like on the bench. To remove it, I had to take off a 1/4-inch copper line that came from this fitting over here. I had to unhook electrical both from the compressor and from the other. I'll show you how that goes back together. And I had to, this is what the unit looked like. So you can see this gasket is shot in here. And it seems like the part that was actually leaking, this is where the copper line hooks up, and you can see it has a little plunger that pushes up right here. It seems like it was leaking out of there. And so what I did is I took this apart, and you can see this is where the electrical hooked on to both that side and this side. I'll show you how it goes back to the electrical lines come up through here. And then with this, they call this a 4-way because it screws on to that fitting that's sticking up, and then you have the gauge that goes on right here. You have the line that comes out here that attaches, and then you have this pressure relief valve that attaches over here. So I'm going to mount those on the new, this is the new part that I got. Has the same part number as the original. It looks a little bit different, but similar. So I'm going to mount this one, and I'll show you how I do that. First, I'm going to take this cover off of here. You can see there's just a single screw, and that'll expose it to look a lot like that one. And then you can see where the electrical needs to go, and you can see these, where all these fittings are going to go. Got the cover off. You can see that when you push that button on the top down, it breaks these contacts. When you lift that red button up, it makes contacts turn on the compressor. And then it has a pressure switch that will, when it gets to 125 psi, it'll turn it off. When it gets to 95, it'll turn it on. Before I go and hook up the electrical, I'm going to put the pop-off valve, and I'm going to put the gauge on. You can see I've got some pipe thread sealant, pipe dope here that I'm going to use to get those on there. All right, I've got pipe dope on here. I'm going to thread this one into here first of all, get that started, and then I've got pipe dope on this guy too. I'm going to get him started on here. You can see that threading in there. You can see there's an area where you can get a wrench on there, and an area where you can get a wrench on this part right here. So I'm just going to snug those up. Okay, I've got both of those mounted on there. Now I can take it over and put it onto the fitting. I'm going to thread it onto this fitting. This thing needs pipe dope also. Okay, I've got that pipe dope on. I'm going to thread this onto there, but I'm not going to turn it all the way. It ends up like this, but in order to access the electrical, I'm going to leave it this way so I can hook up the electrical, and then I'll go ahead and turn it into the position it needs to be in. I've got it threaded on to that fitting, and I have it aimed this way, and then now I'm going to hook up the electrical to it. To do that, I've got to remove these guys and slide them onto the wire. You can see they have little retainers that go in there. So I'm going to use these on the wire, feed the wire in, and then I'll show you how it hooks up. I have these on the wire. Now I'm going to feed it up through this hole. And then when I tighten this threaded coupling down, it's going to pinch on here and hold these wires snugly in there. I've got them both fed through there. So watch what happens right in here. As I tighten this up, you're going to see it's going to start to pinch. See how those close? Just a minute, I got in the way. See how as I tighten this up, I'm just getting it hand tight. It closes down on those wires to hold them snugly in place. Okay, now I'm going to make the electrical connections. You can see that it's marked neutral and power, and then it's got a place for the ground here. So I'm going to loosen these, then I'm going to slide these U-shaped connectors in there. So power is black, it goes on here. White is neutral, it's going to go on there. And you do that for both sides. This side is all connected. You can see neutral is on that screw, power is here, ground is connected to there. Now I'm going to turn this 90 degrees so I can get to the other side to do that one. With it turned 90 degrees, now I can have access to hook these guys up, and I also have the right alignment to connect the other fitting that goes here, and then there's the copper line that goes from here over to underneath of there. This side is connected also. Now I'm ready to put that other fitting in here, so I'm going to have to put some sealant on that, thread it in here, and then I'll also mount the copper line. This is the copper line, so it mounts in here so that this fitting goes on there, right here, and then the other one, you can see there's a fitting underneath there that this threads to, so I'm going to get those put on. I've got that finger tight now. You can see both those locations, and I'm just going to snug it up with a wrench now. This is the regulator. This is the one that mounts here. Turns out there's just not quite enough clearance to turn it around. I could probably rotate this a little, but to get it to clear, I just take this cap off, and then there's enough room to thread this on there to get the regulator in place. So I'm going to put sealant on that, work that, and I'm also going to I got the regulator with sealant on it, and so I'm just gonna, it should go pretty smoothly. You can see it just clears when I go around here. I'm gonna get that tightened up. Got it tightened on there. Now I can put this cap back on here and thread that down. That's the adjustment for the regulator. And then what I want to do is do a test run and see if this is going to hold air. I should mention, while I had that off, it was easy access to the drain plug. And so I went ahead and changed the oil in here and put fresh gear oil. You pretty much, like the thing says, just fill it up to where it's in the midpoint there. I've got it pumped up part way, and it seems to be holding air. That part's working, so I'm going to test the limits of the switch. It cut off right at 125, right where it's supposed to. So now I'm going to use the pop-off valve to bleed air until it gets down to 90 and see if that switch turns back on like it's supposed to. This is going to be loud, but when I do the pop-off valve, you'll hear a rush of air, and then watch as this gauge gets down to 90, the motor should kick back on again. Okay, it's working like it should. There are no leaks. I'm going to go ahead and mount the cover on this switch. The cover is on. No leaks. So it's all done.